Hi, I'm Jim Smith. This is the 1000. This is our when the Liberals created the gun lobby episode. We're now getting into 1978. 1978 is when the National Firearms Association gets created out of various other organizations. Bill Jones is our first leader, and he's got a very ambitious idea of being a lobbyist and a spokesman in Ottawa for us. He sets up an organization called the National Firearms Association. He recruits from across Canada activists, and a very interesting structure. I'd like to talk to Bill about this sometime if I could, is he actually had provincial chapters, so not like a director that then elects, but a whole structure that was done in each province. They had some control of its own affairs and things like that. I thought it was a brilliant structure. And we land in 1978 because, of course, C-83 is dead. Long live C-83. We have a new bill out, and it is called C-51. I just love. It's pretty much the same name as the other one. We've got a guy by the name of Warren Allman showing up here now. We have a guy named Francis Fox, and away we go with more gun control. The permit stays. It's called the Firearms Acquisition Certificate, and this is probably the most controversial of all the episodes that were brought forward in that. And the interesting thing is, a lot of guys, and I'm not talking about Bill Jones or Dave Tomlinson or the guys from Ontario Handgun Association, what I would call the real radicals in our group, but a lot of people, the fish and game organizations, a lot of the hunting organizations went, you know something, FAC will lead to registration, it'll lead to confiscation, and guess what, it happened. But at the time, oh no, it'll never happen, we're never going to do that, we're just doing some bookkeeping. Of course, the other thing, that dirty little thing came out, remember I told you back in 1968 we had a legislation from Pierre Elliott Trudeau during his early days as Justice Minister, when he did the ominous criminal code amendments. He had allowed for the prohibition of firearms, and we're told it would never happen unless there's emergency. So this happy bunch of Lalonde and Bassford and Almond and Fox, they prohibit machine guns. From 1936 up to this date, machine guns have been legal in Canada. For 40 years, there had been no unlawful activity involved. There was about 5,000 bona fide collectors of full autos, and there are maybe 20,000 guns. I don't know the numbers. I've never really researched how close my numbers are. That's my understanding from Dave Tomlinson when he was president of the National Firearms Association, so he's a pretty smart guy, so I'll go with those. Very small numbers, and we fought hard. In fact, the NFA got the reputation in Ottawa behind our back, because of course they never tell you what they're thinking to their face because they're two-faced. I haven't got a word for those people, I really don't. So I'll just leave a blank here. So that the NFA was a group of disgruntled machine gun collectors. Well, the machine gun collectors have been the first ones to get the shaft, were the first ones to get politicized. But something else, and it slipped by in all the fuss and furor what's going on, is they called them prohibited weapons. This is the first time the weapon adjective gets used on civilian-owned firearms, which by and large aren't weapons. The military and the police have weapons, we have firearms. I suppose you could argue hunting firearms are weapons, but target shooters, collectors, that sort of stuff, guns, the mens rea of the guilty mind does not apply. They are not what you would call weapons. So we got beat on that one, and we never noticed it for quite a while. It was several years afterwards. I was talking to Dave Tomlinson. I said, you know, we got snookered on that one, didn't we? And he said, you know, Jim, you're right. It slipped right by. There was so much other chaos going on because things were going to happen. In the classic doctrine of fighting the last war, Pierre Trudeau is still fighting the FLQ in 77, going on into 78, this going on. And there's pretty good evidence that what was going on in cabinet, going on in the higher ranks of the military, the Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police, the RCMP, Justice Department, and the customs people and all those usual suspects, was prevention of terrorism, armed terrorism going over. And again, I'm a sociologist by education. I read all that stuff. Guevara, Regis Debray, Castro, Mao, Ho Chi Minh. I've read all those guys. None of that stuff has any possibility of working in Canada, where all those deer hunters and duck hunters don't want to change the government. Unless, of course, they do, in which case all you have to do is go out in a ballot box and change it. So the insecurity of the bureaucratic mind is based on the fact that they have an agenda that is subliminal, it's hidden from our view, that they are trying to implement a change in our society. They are, as I said in another episode, social Darwinists, and if you haven't looked up social Darwinism, please do look it up. It's essential to your understanding of these people. They do believe that they're smarter than everybody else, and the mistakes of the past will not be made in the present and will carry through to a better life in the future. They are humanists, and they are claimed to be rational, and they're wildly irrational. So we get back into good old gun control. So C-51 comes out. It's the Criminal Law Amendment Act of 1977. If that sounds kind of familiar, it is. The prohibited firearms, the automatic firearms, are allowed to be kept, transferred between other bona fide collectors, but the idea is they're confiscated upon the death of the owner. So this shows there's no cotton picking public danger. People keep them. They still got them. I know quite a few full auto collectors still that still have them. But it's an incremental, slow Chinese water torture, prohibition, confiscation, because it all happens so slowly and alone, and instead of dealing with an organized group of people who are trying to fight back, which happens later on in our story, we're dealing with grieving widows, upset children. These people are pawn scum. Imagine picking on an old widow and taking away her husband's property. Just disgusting. The FAC does come into play. It's set at $10. Initially, you're only allowed one. We discovered that the Act did not prohibit having more than one. My sergeant decided that if it wasn't disallowed, he could do it. He gave me two, and then pretty soon everybody had multiples. And this sounds like kind of a funny win, but they were requiring us to send our originals in the mail to buy guns mail order. And to my American friends, we didn't ever had GCA 68 up here, so we can still mail order guns. In a big country like Canada, with so few people in it, it's an essential service. But having to send the certificate out and back, and then wait for it to come back, which could take a long time, and the costs were small but not insignificant. Most dealerships, instead of sending the FAC back with the gun because parcel post is slow, adopted the policy of sending them back first class, which of course added to the costs of doing these things. But generally it was just harassment. It was just an attempt to slow down people who were collectors from buying guns, because to the police, bureaucrat, Justice Department mind, if you're buying lots of guns, you're doing it because you're up to some sort of evil. Now, it could be that your granny died and you have a few $1,000 and you want to start building your gun collection. It could be that you've got a deal where if you buy 10, you get one free, which means if you can flog the 10 to your friends, you got a free gun. If you're poor, those deals in the old days used to be how a lot of us young guys got a gun. It's the way it was. Originally it was $10. Protection of private property is definitely prohibited at this point. Remember, this came from the previous C-83 legislation. And of course, the prohibitions just went, once they got the machine guns and got the precedent and got the courts to go, it went on. During this time, there were rallies, letter writing campaigns, ads in newspapers, letters to the editor, in just huge profusion. And nobody gives us any credit for that. The worst thing about C-51 was that the Progressive Conservative Party went along with it. Oh, this is a compromise. We've achieved a compromise legislation. No, they didn't. They sold us out. They sold us down the road. And it's beginning of, how could I put it? We had to get rid of the Liberals by electing the Progressive Conservatives, and we had to create a party called the Reform Party to get rid of the Progressive Conservatives. And gun people were intensely behind all those. Again, we get no credit for it, but trust me, we were there, and we were there in great numbers. It's a long, slow process. But yeah, the Progressive Conservatives sold us right out. It was a compromise they could live with. And if you want to know where never forgive, never forget, never give up, never get in, and never, never compromise comes from, it comes from the invention of the gun lobby in 1978, because we all came together. Out of the disparate small organizations, Bill Jones got the National Firearms Association going. The Ontario Handgun Association ramped up it, and they're very threatened because it's always handguns first. People want to ban, but many people got into the fight at that time. There's a lot of dirty crud went on there too. So one of the I'm going to cut this off now. I'm going to tell you, have a short episode after this. I'm going to talk to you about one of the sneaky little dirty things that was done prior to or subsequent to C-51, that based on C-51, that caused us a lot of damage and showed a lot where our enemies were. Thanks for dropping in and watching. If you liked what you saw, please share it with your friends. Please like it. Please subscribe to our channel and drop into www.the1000.ca and follow our movement. Bye.